Okay, so we're here with Dave Rossum.
Hi there.
Bristronica. How are you enjoying the show, Dave?
Well, here I am, and not too jet lagged, and we're set up over here. I'm here to have fun and tell stories more than anything else.
Great. Well, we're here to listen. Yeah, what have you brought to the show? What have you got on your table?
It's pretty light duty. Like I said, I'm here to tell stories more than sell gear. But I just brought a little rack with some of our newer modules. We've got the Assimilator over here, and our newest gadget, the Qtus, which interfaces MIDI into the Assimilator. My software guy did most of the work there, so I'm just learning how to use it now. But it's been working really well at the show with the MIDI keyboard and so on.
And what does the Assimilator do?
Well, the Assimilator, of course, is the latest sampler, and I'll talk probably a few minutes into my talk on Sunday about what it does. But the idea was to make a sampler that was really designed for modular stuff. So it does wild things like being able to pitch shift up 5 octaves, down 15 octaves. You can phase modulate. You can actually have the audio of one sample modulate the playback of the other sample, the playback speed, and that gives you these wonderful rich tones. It's got stuff like the mutate control, so you can take it from being a really high fidelity sampler into just absolutely turning it sound into grunge. You can control the number of bits in the output. It's stereo, so you can pan it around, and all this stuff is under control voltage CV control, or now MIDI continuous controller stuff with the Qtus.
Amazing. And what sort of memory does it have, and how do you load sounds onto it? Like,
it's all on a little SD card, just this little tiny micro thing here. It'll just take WAV files off of your computer, or of course you can sample directly into the module in stereo or mono. And it's got, I've even forgotten how much it is. It's like a few thousand seconds of sound at 48 kHz that it can sample.
Superb.
So there's lots and lots of memory in there. Although, customers go crazy and they dump their entire WAV library onto a sound card and then wonder why they can't fit 45 hours of sound into the Assimilator.
Exactly. Would you ever have imagined that it was possible to put so much on such a tiny piece of equipment?
No, I guess is the answer. That's the thing about Moore's Law. I mean, we started back with the Emulator 1, which had a whole 128K of memory in it, and that memory filled up 2/3 of the circuit board on the digital circuit board of the Emulator 1. And at the time, we didn't realize, but we'd made a really good bet in going into sampling, because that was a technology that takes direct advantage of this Moore's Law exponential growth. And so every sample we made, rather than getting more expensive as time went on, it just got cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. We could expand the memory. We just lucked out in terms of deciding to go into a marketplace that had this economics on its side.
Yeah.
But even then, even knowing, which we figured out sometime in the late 80s, that we were riding this wonderful curve, the human mind just can't comprehend exponential growth. So, the number of mathematical operations I'm doing in this thing, running at a gigahertz, and when the thing is full on sampling, it's doing like 8 multiplies every cycle. So it's like 8 billion operations per second to do this crazy phase modulation stuff, and that's what it took. That's why phase modulation isn't done by anybody else. It's because you really have to get in and harness the horsepower of these really powerful CPUs now to be able to do that stuff.
And what's exciting you at the moment? We spoke off camera that you don't want to sort of. Because I talked about my love for the rack things that you created.
Right, yeah, I still love to invent stuff. I've got 3 jobs, and they're all inventing jobs. I work at Universal Audio. They call me their tame analog designer. And we're working on stuff there that I really can't talk about, but it's very challenging, very interesting electronic design for studio electronics. And then, of course, my work with Rossum Electro. And lately I've been working on the SP1200 drum machine and some ideas like that. So Eurorack designs have slowed down a little bit, but my brain is full of a whole bunch of new things for Eurorack that if I live longer, they're going to come out. And then, of course, with Sound Semiconductor, I get to design chips, analog chips, with their brilliant chief designer, Derek Bowers. He's an absolute genius to work with, and so I'm always learning stuff from him as well.
That's great, and his chips are in sequential stuff, in Udo stuff. He was telling me, so many, the biggest brand.
We've got new chips on the horizon. I'm working on a few of them now with Derek and my friend Neil, who's across the way over there. I'm like a kid in the candy store. There's so much I can work on. I'm just busy with all this stuff, which is what I want. My wife asked me, when are you going to retire? And I said, if I retired, I'd be doing the same thing because I love it. So I might as well get paid for it.
Exactly. Yeah. Fantastic. Well, your stuff's so revered and, you're so well loved in the industry. Yeah, it's great to see you keep inventing and keep bringing new things. What are we listening to in terms of what's coming out here?
I have the Assimilator just patched up for the phase modulator. So you can hear that, that's what I love, these wonderful rich timbres that you can get. And then, of course, we've got the panharmonium over here. I've got it set to dry over here. But if we turn this to wet, it should really morph this sound into... I hope you're hearing that. Just the crazy, wild stuff you can do with this again this was Bob Bliss, my software genius's brainchild, and we just had the most fun with this, and I can never take my hands off that module just because it's so wild. Then we don't have in the patch right now, but I've got the through zero filter, which was a crazy idea I had, where you actually could sweep the filter into negative frequency, and it does stuff like John Chowning's FM, that was all the basis of the Yamaha DX series synthesizers. This is now doing that same thing that they did with an oscillator with a filter, so you can now put a signal into it and sweep that sound around and get those same wild stuff. I think that's an underappreciated module.
So the in the negative frequencies.
Exactly. So the idea is, you imagine you hit a resonant filter with an impulse, and it starts ringing down like a sine wave. That's just what filters do. Well, as you sweep the frequency now, it gets slower and slower, and as you go through zero, it starts turning backwards. So it's that reversing of the shape. Your ear loves that sound. That's why the FM synthesizer sounded so cool. And so now we can do it with the filter on arbitrary signal coming through. Just crazy idea. One of these lightning bolts that hit me when I sit in the lab with my tech, Gary Hull, who's another long-time EMU genius that's working at Universal Audio with me. So.
Well, I'm glad you describe yourselves as EMU geniuses, because you are, and I think everyone in the industry loves what you're doing and continue to do. So thank you very much for speaking to us, Dave. Really appreciate it.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. I'm having a good time.